I am so happy to be joined by the beautiful Marlissa Collier.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone I bring on here, I'm like, Black people are so multi-hyphenated. I'm like,
yeah,
journalist.
We have to be. We have to.
Come
be.
on.
Yeah.
Podcaster.
All that.
Writer.
Yeah.
Producer. Because you produced your own podcast for a minute.
Yes, and it was a mess for a while, but it was a learning curve for sure. I'm glad that I went through that. I wouldn't change it. Anybody who is a creative, learn from the ground up. I would tell you, learn from the ground up.
Oh yes,
it is. That producer could walk away, and then what you gonna do?
Man,
do what's up? So, yeah. But now, shout out to Kenny and Sour Patch because I don't have to worry about that now.
Now you got a squad to rep.
I don't know about a squad. But we cool, you know what I mean? We cool, like we fam or whatever.
We produce.
Yeah, right.
That's about it.
Yeah, business. Right? So, but nah, yeah, we outside. We here.
And your thing for me is politics. Your umbrella, even though you have all of these different aspects to you, kind of land under the umbrella of being a Black woman in politics.
Yeah, yeah. I was actually recording with two young ladies who I want you to meet, but I was recording with them yesterday, and I was kind of thinking through like how I got into this, and it really came from me being a very small young girl when my mom was studying sociology. She was getting her undergrad degree when I was really little, and she would read her school books to me. And I remember like beginning to comprehend what she was saying, and then looking around my neighborhood like, wait, all of this is connected to like what I'm seeing. And then I would start like paying attention to politics, and I really started understanding that the people we are putting in place, the policies that are being put in place to really govern our society have a direct impact, not only on like the 10,000 foot view, but also what I'm seeing day to day, from how trash my school was to the type of grocery stores or the lack thereof that I had in my neighborhood. So yeah, my whole goal is to get people from places like where I'm from to understand the importance of being engaged in the political atmosphere, but also to understand it so that we're not always on defense. Like I want our people to be able to play offense during those elections, and that means engaging in understanding who's who, what they stand for, what that's going to mean for your everyday life, so you can make the right or the decision that's right for you. I don't want to say the right decision. The decision that's right for you when you go to, put people in place. So yeah.
What I find really dope about your podcast is I feel like as a Black person in this country, it has been my experience. It's been very easy to just choose to be apolitical, and completely disengaged. And so because it's like neither of these sides are really fucking with me super tough.
But that's important to recognize too,
right?
Yeah.
So, but then as I've gotten older and I've matured, I have seen the necessity to actually be active in voting and things of that nature, or just being understanding of what's going on in the political realm and to actually be active in it. So I loved that I go to your podcast because I'm like, all right, I don't need what the liberals tell me to do. I don't need what the Republicans tell me to do. I need to know what the niggas is supposed to be doing.
Look,
what are we supposed to be doing?
What does this mean for me? Right? And that's real. That's real.
So like that kind of opens up to one of the questions I had, which was like, I, as someone who identified as like apolitical for a long time, and just being like, I don't even care what's going on, like that's them people's things. And then weirdly enough, I started watching a lot of these like historical documentaries, and I don't know if they're still called, they're like reenactments. You know the ones we had to used to watch in like high school? The
those
2023 ones are the shit now.
They're great,
top actors and shit and CGI. I was like, what? This is great.
Oscar for political.
Right. I was like, this is fantastic.
Great,
and I started really, even when you speak about your mom being a sociologist or studying sociology, I started looking at like patterns of human behavior at a large scale over time. And I was particularly captivated by war tactics. And I was like, oh, I can't be apolitical because it's not a smart war tactic.
That's it. Yeah.
It's not a smart war tactic.
Yeah.
And if I believe that liberation is a war, liberation is always a war, as we are literally watching right now unfold
100%.
in our world. Liberation is a battle that is fought.
It's bloody.
It is bloody.
Yeah.
It costs lives.
That's
it
right.
costs money. It costs all of these things. And I'm like, oh, I can't willingly choose to not engage in this battle anymore, and I have to insert my way in. So I would love, from your perspective, like, do you look at it as both like a attack on both sides? Like, we both need to be creating our own things as Black people while also like infiltrating the system and changing at the same time? Like, how does your mind work out what we should, be doing? Yeah,
so I think you're 100% right in that you really just can't be apolitical. Like I hear, it's funny because I think I put something on my story a few weeks ago that was like, I hate when people say like, oh, I don't get involved with all that politics shit. And I'm like, well, that politics shit is certainly involved with you. So you probably should be involved because this stuff is impacting everything you do, from the gas that you put in your car to the very car that you're going to drive, to the roads that you're driving on, to that job that you're driving to. Politics is going to infiltrate every single portion of your life. So being apolitical is just crazy. But I think for a lot of people, like, number one, there is the mental exhaustion. Yes. People are just fatigued, right? We have so many things going on. We have so many things to worry about. This is the first time in our country where so many people are living paycheck to paycheck. So we are having the majority of our population in survival mode. So it's hard to strategize when you're just trying to survive, right? So I think there's like a sense of fatigue, but I think the other part is like, ignorance is bliss. And so if I don't know, I don't have to take a stance. But that's the difference between like, I genuinely don't know, so I can't take a stance, or I am going to willingly not know so that I don't have to take a stance. And the latter is where I come in like, hey, that's that bullshit. That you are not allowed to sit out simply so that you don't have to have a stance.
Yeah.
Like that's just not okay. To your point though, I think like for Black people in particular, like I think Killer Mike said it great. Like the best time for us was right after Reconstruction, right? Where, we were so separated, right? But we were fighting for our equality. It was really when integration came in, and then they were able to infiltrate our party. I mean, not our party, but our politics, but also our sense of power that we had just captured. I think for Black people, our country is opening up. The world is opening up. Now, is it happening slower for our demographic than other people?
Yes.
Probably. But I do think that it is now our time to start stepping up and saying, okay, until we can have our own, right, our own party, we are still part of this greater United States of America. And so we need to be careful to make sure that we are also rearing leaders that can go and play in that two-party system that we have, like making sure that they understand it, making sure that they know how that game is played so that we can have actual people who are there representing us. I got to give a shout out to kind of the big five, right, in DC. You got AOC, you have Rashida Tlaib, you have Ilhan Omar. You have this group that, crazy enough, I'm not going to say the name of the PAC, but there is a very heavily funded PAC that is looking to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to have candidates run against these people because of what they stand for and because they are on the forefront of fighting for the things that people that look like me and you need. For me, we have to get involved, and until you can create your own party, right, which we had, and it got deemed a terrorist organization and shut down, we have to understand the powers that be right now. But what's great is that when we do get involved, it may not happen overnight, and y'all got to get used to the idea of like the work I do right now, I may not see the fruits
absolutely
like really, coming to fruition in my lifetime, but there is this faith of knowing like the work that I'm doing right now is going to affect generations after me. And I think we all have to get used to that idea of I may not see the change come in my lifetime. King barely saw it, right? All the things that man was running around doing, and they had him on the terrorist list, right? But now you look at him and he's like, I'm good on any MLK. Are we on MLK? We
might be. Nigga, right? We ain't be in the hood.
So we have to get used to the idea of like my political activism and my willingness to be involved and not be apolitical will help down the line And I think one of those things that we may see is a change in the way politics works in our country, because people are calling for big money to get out of politics and out of DC. People are calling for lobbying to get out of DC. And we have seen sentiments change because the people have called for it. So it's going to take time, but I think it'll happen. So yeah, apolitical, like, it's like, what is that in my head? Like, you can't be that and be the master of your own fate.
Whoo!
Like, you cannot like just sit back and be like, my vote doesn't matter. Well, I guess not if you think about it that way. But my shit matters.
Yeah.
And my voice matters because I'm able to affect people around me. As long as I'm giving them good information in a way that meets them the way they are, where they are, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I think America does a fantastic job of making everything complicated that in which they're looking to hide, right? Like, if you look at our healthcare system, why is it so fucking complicated? Because there's a lot of ways that you would be able to find out that we are stealing from you.
That's right.
Literally,
Taxes.
all of
Yeah,
it. Let's
all
make
of
it
it.
super complicated so a person doesn't even have the desire to go through being empowered, using the knowledge to be empowered to make decisions for their life. But as you were talking, you brought something interesting up, because you talked about the Reconstruction era and going from segregation into being non-segregated. And a while back, I made a comment that is probably, I'm noticing now, is a little flippant.
Oh, okay.
But I made a comment more or less along the lines of, like, we would have done better Black people as a whole would have actually probably done better to not desegregate schools. I made that comment a while back. And though now I go, that is way more complex than the simplistic way that I threw it out.
Yeah.
My intention was, I think that everything is a double-edged sword, right? So, and at any point, if you're like, got some extra, throw it in, right? But this concept of, like, I feel like desegregation was presented as this social cause from the perspective of people in power, right? It's like, it's this social cause to make us better. But in reality, I feel like there is a power play that runs underneath that of, now I get to indoctrinate your children how I want to indoctrinate them.
Okay.
As we move them into these different schools, and they're going to face all this trauma, they probably don't care, but we also get to make sure that, like, they are indoctrinated how we would want them to be indoctrinated, as opposed to when we see y'all thriving together and coming together, you come too strong, right? Kind of like the story of the Tower of Babel, right?
Yeah,
it's like, knocked Babel down and gave everybody different languages, because they saw that if you come together, you can literally
that is a great
build whatever,
example,
right?
Yeah.
So I would love to hear your thoughts on, like I said, I think my statement was too simple to be like, we shouldn't have desegregated. But I would love to hear your thoughts on, like, how, like, because like you said, we all had like a common thing at that point. We still should, but like, we were segregated, so we had to be with each other. We had to work together.
Right.
And now it feels like we're more dispersed, and it's harder to get people on one page. So what are your thoughts specifically around, like, how do we get, like, kind of the role segregation played in that, but then also, like, is it even possible for us to come into a space where we actually can get on a little more of one accord?
Yeah, so I think about this topic a lot, because I've probably made comments very similar to the one that you've made. And I feel like I've thought through my logic for making those comments. And so here it is. So when we were segregated, right, all we knew was what we had, right? We could look across the street and be like, damn, they look like they living better over there. Like, I want those books. I want that building. But we didn't really know what was waiting for us in that building. It was just, honestly, that when we looked over, we saw what white supremacy had taught us, that a school that white children were sitting in was automatically going to be better than the school that our children were sitting in, because that is just the way the world worked. Anything that was white was right, and it was better. What we didn't realize is that having control over our kids' education, over not only what they were being taught, but also how they were being taught. And that's a whole nother thing that I learned growing up in K through 12 and going to school specifically, that my mother chose that we're going to integrate the arts and sports and movement of your body, which we have learned, right, actually helps kids not only learn but retain information. So she was very clear about how I want my children to be taught, not only what I want them to be taught, but how I want them to be taught. So I think the end of segregation came because all we really knew was it has to be better for us over there, because that's all we've ever seen. They have the best of everything. Then the end, and I put that in quotes, right? I'm actually finishing up Isabel Wilkerson's book, The Warmth of Other Suns, right now. And she talks about how even after, all of these laws are signed saying you have to end segregation, right? Certain cities or states or towns will be like, I'll decide when I end it. I don't care if it's a federal law or not. I'll let you know when I decide to let you into my school.
Oh,
and sometimes it came 20 years later, right? Because the local sheriff was like, they're not coming to my school. They're not coming into this town, whatever. So you end it, and then all of a sudden you meet a brand new devil that you didn't know that you were going to meet. At first it was just, oh, my books are old, or they're used, or my school is a little run down, right? I got to get the janitor up there to replace the roof. Now it's, these people are spitting at my children going into this school. The teachers are putting my kids in the back of the school or the classroom. They're being sent to detention or suspended at levels that are much higher than their counterparts. They're being unfairly graded. They're being ignored. They're being kicked out of school. Or what we saw in the 90s, right? Black boys in particular were being called special and put into these special ed classes because of behavioral issues, right? So there's a whole new devil now that you meet on the other side of this desegregation. So for me, I do actually understand when people like us, and honestly, even like I keep saying Killer Mike, but he's a great example, said that the best time for us was after Reconstruction, where all of a sudden we started to have more resources and more power, but we were able to wield that power in our community to make change. It wasn't spread and it wasn't diluted because we're in rooms now with people who really don't want to see us get ahead. The indoctrination part, I think, is interesting. So I went through, public schools my whole life, LAUSD. And, I went to schools that were considered, like, pretty terrible, to be honest. Like, especially when I got to junior high and high school, like, Crenshaw lost their accreditation my senior year. Oh, shit. Right? Like, lost their accreditation. So I was like, am I going to graduate and what? We had to cut a deal with the schools that had, like, accepted us to make sure that our diplomas would mean something. But I can say that my mother did a great job of making sure that, like, she was in on the curriculum, what was being taught, and if it was something that she felt like we weren't getting enough of, she would supplement. So I had a summer reading list. Like, I had worksheets and packets that I had to do in the summer outside of sports camp to make sure that I was getting the things that she wanted me to get. So, desegregation is a thing now. We're all, mixed up. We should also point out, though, that our schools are still highly segregated in this country. And it's because of how schools are funded, right? Yeah. But also how people are locked into what we would call the hood or the ghetto, right? So, my schools were mostly black growing up, and there's a reason for that. Politics plays a role in even that. But don't put it all on the schools either, y'all. If your kids are going to, these public schools, I don't understand a parent that's just like, oh, okay, well, go learn. You're not going to check in? You're not going to see what they're teaching your kid? You're not going to make sure that they can read? Because I've seen parents be like, high schoolers reading at a 4th grade level, and they're perplexed about why their child can't read. And I'm like, well, where were you? You didn't know the kid couldn't read? 7 years, bro. He come home every day, and nothing in you said, hey, what'd you learn today? What'd you talk about at school? Like, read me something, or let's sit down and read this together. Like, so y'all, yes, our children are being indoctrinated by whatever you believe, right? I believe, me personally, down in Texas, they're being indoctrinated with the straight agenda. But
fair.
Right?
Deeply fair.
Right?
Yes.
Because it's the Christian agenda down here.
I was just talking to one of them about that the other day. I was like, everyone has been like, how has it been moving to Texas? And I'm like, there's been all these great things that I've talked about, but I was like, there are some things that I'm just like, y'all know it's 2023. Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that specific, I'm like, the homophobia down here is crazy.
We're teaching abstinence to a state that has a decent amount of STDs amongst high schoolers and teen pregnancies. So nothing in their head says like, hey, this abstinence thing ain't working. Maybe we
all
should
the science
teach
to prove
sex.
it for 50 years.
Maybe we should teach. Y'all gonna do it you gonna
Yes.
fuck. You're going to do it.
Yes.
So
and we
here's how
know
to do
you're
it
going to
safely.
do it because we're also going to remove your ability to have an abortion so that you stay in poverty.
Y'all did it.
And you keep funding this system. Like,
My mom, God rest her soul, she had my oldest sister when she was, I believe, 16. And it was funny because another one of my sisters got pregnant. She was like 18. I remember my mom was like, we don't need to be celebrating this. And I remember I looked at her, I was like, didn't you have a baby at 16? And my mom was like, exactly. That's what I'm saying. And I was just thinking, like, nothing in my mother's head made her think, like, I know I had those urges at that age, right? And there was nothing my super Christian mother could do about it. I went out and did it anyway. Why don't I teach my children, not that it's wrong to do it, but that you're going to do it, and here's how to make sure you protect yourself and not end up with a baby. Nothing in her head told her.
knowing just anything about your sexual health in general, even if it's not interacting with another person, like, I'm just now at 35 beginning to fully understand, like, my cycle.
Really?
Like, fully understand it to like, the science of it, the hormones, the, like, what those hormones are doing, how those levels are changing.
Send me that right up because
oh, yes.
all I know is that I get crampy and then it shows up, and I sometimes have an attitude with people. And then
I'm going to send you something that's going to tell you
M&Ms.
all of the above. And for my male listeners, y'all also need to take deep understanding of, like, because there's this, like, thing of, like, men and women don't understand each other. And let's say male and female, right? Male and females don't, like, because I used to like to use the word that's appropriate for biological sex, right? You. So, like, male and females understand. I'm like, we are all, like, coexisting together. We all have males and females in our lives.
That's right.
So if we care to understand them, like, this is a huge part of understanding a woman. And so, like, it also helps you understand. I laughed because the doctor who was explaining it, the person doing the interview was a male, and he was like, so what about men's hormones? And she's like, it's like testosterone every 15 minutes, and that's pretty black and white. And then she went through, like, what happens in a female, and he was like, oh, that's a lot of things.
You see what I'm saying?
Switching and moving. You have testosterone, progesterone, and estrogen all doing different things at different times of the month.
That's it.
And I'm like, whew.
Yeah, and you wonder why I don't want to be bothered with you. Because all of this is going on inside.
And she was literally explaining it to him through the lens of, like, he's a heterosexual male, and she's like, this will help you know when to interact, when to not interact, when to be really soft, when to not be really soft, all of those different things, when to leave her alone, like, all these aspects. When is the best time to have a conversation to get to an ending of understanding? Because there are times in here where that's not gonna work and she's like, and it's not blaming women because they're crazy. She's like, there's a point in the cycle where her testosterone is high. So that means
she's
two
just as aggressive
testosterone pieces.
as you are.
Yes.
Yep.
And so both of y'all can't come. Both of y'all can't come into this conversation with real ability to come to a level of understanding. Or you should hit these days of the month because this is where her estrogen's high. And it actually shows that women are great problem solvers from jump. Not even that, oh, she's going to be more nice to what you want. No, she's actually probably going to come to a better solution than you on this problem during these times. So, like, even this idea of, I just feel like it's all about power. Like, every aspect of it is, if you stay uninformed, you stay disempowered.
That's it.
And then we get to do what we want to do.
That's it. That and uninformed, busy, distracted.
Yes.
We talked about yesterday just how many distractions. Like, so I went to Montgomery and Selma, and that was my first time going to either, and just understanding the level of collaboration that had to take place to get some of the things done that happened down there. And these people didn't have internet. They ain't had no TikTok. They couldn't text each other. Like, to think about the way that they had to speak to each other and really sit down and plan and strategize how to get these things done. But as we were talking, I was like, yeah, but we spending 3 hours a day scrolling on Instagram, another 2 on TikTok. Don't be a content creator, because that's 3 hours right there that you in front. So the distractions, right, and just the differences in what we are trying to solve for is there. So uninformed, distracted, and on some level, right, happy to be both of those things. Because if I am informed, that means I got to do better, right? Like, to know better, I really got to do better.
And it's enraging, right? James Baldwin was very right.
Told us.
It's very enraging. And to that point, like, as someone like you who engages in politics frequently, that's literally what you do as a creative, which is a beautiful gift to give. I remember when I came to do an episode with you, I was so angry.
Right. God damn it, did y'all know this?
Right? I was researching all these topics that we got to talk about, and I was like, what the
Yeah.
How do you even go about considering your mental health?
Yeah, that's, for me, I try not to engage too much on the weekends unless something like really big happens. So yeah, I give myself that time, because as someone who has dealt with depression and anxiety, like I have to protect my mental health, right? And I've noticed that if my cup is empty, I ain't got nothing to give to the world. So I try to make sure that I fill it up on the weekends. I hang out with friends and, just watch dumbass TV and just do stuff that I wouldn't otherwise do during the week, really, like go out and hang out. But I think taking a break is important. With social media, like, we are on a constant trauma cycle. Like, every time you open it, and I think they call it trauma porn now, right? So, if it bleeds, it leads, even on the news. So we're going to hear about the latest murder, the latest mass shooting. But there's a lot of good stuff out there too. And so I do try to make sure that, like, my feeds and algorithm will show me the good shit as well as, like, the real shit. So yeah, taking a break, working out. It's the holiday, so I'm definitely starting to put on my holiday weight. But working out,
as we're supposed to.
Yeah, like, I've been eating like crazy for the last week.
In the winter, we're supposed to pack a little bit.
You fluff up for the winter. I'm fluffy in the winter. But yeah, and then getting in the gym. I like to listen to music. Like, I'm a music head. That was my first love. So I will just, like, sit and find some artist, or like a bunch of my friends will send me an artist that I should be listening to, and I'll do that. Hanging out with my dogs, friends, whatever. So just taking a break overall, whatever that means for you. Just getting out of the news cycle, getting out of what the politicians are doing now that ain't shit, behind closed doors. Like, just leave it alone for a couple days. Because it's going to be there on Monday. If they putting something up for a vote on Friday, it's going to be right there on Monday. So I would say, unless it's, something that is very time sensitive, I tend to leave it alone on Saturdays and Sundays, and then I'll get to it on Mondays, just to reset and recalibrate.
Is that how you are able to restore optimism? Because that's the other thing too, of like, the access to so much information could also lead to, like, a very nihilistic view of life, like, this will never get better and da-da-da-da. But, like, it seems that you're still very optimistic that, like, the world, change is consistent, right? So that you're optimistic that the change that could come has a possibility of being positive. Yeah. How do you, like, make sure you have that sense of, like, there is a direction that is moving towards the light, even if we can literally watch darkness be upon us from every direction?
Yeah, I think for me, number one, it's just a deep knowing. Like, I've always just known that, there are good things out there. With all of the bullshit I've experienced, like, there's always been just this deep knowing of, like, all of this is part of something greater. It's something, it's a bigger plan. And so I know that I'm on the right side of things. And from that, I figured if I'm not that special, right? If I'm on the right side, there are other people who are also on the right side, who want to be on the right side. And sometimes we just happen to find each other, right? I just happen to run into people who are like, yeah, this is not it, right? Things are grim right now, but, like, we're continuing to use our voices and our platforms to engage with people. And then sometimes the people give me the optimism, because I'll be like, yo, this is trash right now. and then I'll look in my inbox or my DM or something, and I'll get a message from somebody that's like, thank you for doing this work. Like, there are more of us than it is of them. And it'll just be a quick note that someone will send that will restore that for me. And I feel like it always happens right in time.
Yes.
Like right when I'm on the brink of being like, fuck this. Like, I'm out. I'll get something that reminds me that like this is the path that, I was put on for a reason. So yeah, and then shout out to the creators who make it their business to bring out the good things.
Yes.
Because there are a lot of creators who are cropping up, and it's like, I think there's one TikTok, it says only good news. And it is fantastic. Like I go to that page and it can be something as simple as, a stranger helped someone who had passed out on the street, right? And would have passed away had it not been for this person. And it reminds you that like there are still a lot of us in this world who just have a sense of decency and humanity. Everybody not out to get over on everybody. Everybody's not out to scheme and scam everybody. So yeah, I think the people are what, outside of my deep knowing, like there are more of us who are decent than there are terrible people. One thing I also want to point out is that the terrible people do tend to seek power, right? There's a whole study done on this, right? About the psychological aspects of like people who tend to seek power. They tend to be kind of psychopathic. So when you see the people who are doing these shitty things, I'm like, that makes sense that they went and sought that position so that they could have a sense of power over other people. And then those of us who be chilling, right, do tend to be the more decent people who are not seeking to be in charge of everybody.
Yes.
So when you learn about that, you're like, oh, that makes sense. Of course assholes would go try to be like the president, because who else would want to run a country?
You heard that here. You assholes.
Who else wants to run 350 million people?
Right.
I don't want that responsibility. That's nuts.
No,
the
that's
people
real.
who want it are actually insane. And they show us every day that, like, for them, it's about power. It's not necessarily about doing good for the masses. Yeah.
So this is a sidetrack, but to that point, as a creative, have you had to like come up against that feeling of like, how do I explain? So for me, it's literally that. It's like, I don't actually crave power. Like that's not something that I look to have, but I also have to balance that with I'm a natural born leader in most spaces, and I don't crave like the need to control others and things like that. And one of the things that I noticed have been like something I've had to work on as far as a blockage is like there are ways in which I shortchange myself because I know that if I put everything out, if I go really, really hard in that direction, I will get the power of the thing. And having that comes with so much responsibility. Like all of us as creatives are working towards a goal to have creativity fund our lives, right? Which means that you have to have a certain amount of visibility to be able to do those things. And that creates a space for you to have a certain amount of power. I know that we're both spiritual. So like, I know I'm chosen for that. And there's a reason why, that because of that lack of desire to like want to control and manipulate, I get that. But like, do you struggle sometimes with the concept of like, oh God, like I'm going to actually have to like wield I have the responsibility of wielding my power appropriately if this is actually the thing that I'm asking for.
Yeah. Man, I literally was thinking about this when I was home for the holidays, and I was with a friend of mine, and it was funny because she was just like, "Oh, you just like a local celebrity, huh?" And I laughed, and I remember thinking like, this is never something I never needed to be known by people or anything. The work made it so, right? Like even meeting you, right? It was the work that we were doing that brought us into the same room. And so I really do struggle because I don't necessarily crave to run people's lives or to have any control over people's lives. My prayer from when I was a small child was that I could use my gifts for something bigger than me. Like that was it. I knew I wanted to benefit from it myself, but I wanted it to benefit the people around me for the greater good. and I'm on the track, and I've seen that happen, but I'm also on the track, you know, to make that happen on a bigger scale. So I think for me, I've struggled with it, but I've also prayed the prayer that, like, I want to remain pure in my intentions.
Yeah.
I don't want to do things just for the visibility. I don't want to do things just for, you know, the followership. Like, I want to make sure that my creativity is inspired, and then that thing will go and do what it's meant to accomplish.
That's real.
And if that means power, if that means, you know, financial gain, that's great. But my intentions were pure when I put it out there into the world. And so I think that's how I find my balance. Like, if those things come, that's fine, right? But as long as I put it out into the world with pure intentions to actually help people, I think I'll always be okay. Like, the other thing is keeping people around me who will call me out if they do see me start to get off track. Like, yo, that ain't even you. Like, yeah, pull
your ass
yeah,
down.
like pull right. And there's people who have probably been on this journey with you since very early on, who know you for real and know what you would or would not do. And so I think that's important too. Like, I have a great friend, my friend Darrington, who I think you've met a couple times. But Darrington, I don't care how many followers I get. I don't care how many posts blow up. Darrington is that one friend that will text me and be like, hey, sis, you shouldn't have done that. Hey, sis, you shouldn't have said that. Like, that was messed up. And sometimes I'll be looking at him like, yeah, who you talking to? But then I'm like, no, you need those friends.
Absolutely.
Who they don't care who you are. Like, they like, that ain't even you. And that's not who you said you were, and so I'm calling you on it.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, but I also think that there are a bunch of people who have a lot of power who don't use it for good. And so I'd rather see you with it, me personally,
that's real.
than a George Santos, right? who done took the people's money and funded his product habit. So yeah.
Lord Jesus. I'm sorry.
So yeah, it comes with it, but I think like
white mediocrity just
Lord,
burns my biscuits.
Give me the confidence
It
of
burns
a mediocre.
like the way I have doubted myself and walked into a room every time and been like, oh, what?
And you said something like, if you really went hard, what would happen? Like, I think that's earlier this year, that's where I got to the point. Like, if you just stay consistent, if you went hard, like, look at what you've accomplished without being consistent.
Yeah.
Without, you know, really going hard. Like, just put your foot on the gas for a little bit and see what happens. And it's amazing that I've seen the growth that I have in less than a year, but I'm still the same OG. Like, I'm still the same nigga, right?
And we gonna make sure of that.
Yeah, no, this I know. This
real niggas gonna make sure of that.
This one. I'll see you on social media talking shit.
First of all, you know I'm a nigga,
Hey,
and I
bro.
thought it was funny.
Hey, bro.
But also, let's not. Let's not.
Oh, you posing in front of green walls now. Huh? Don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
no more.
No, I think that's, and I do want to actually veer back, but I do think that that is one of the things that I'm really grateful for when I think about age. And to intend to gain a certain amount of visibility at what is told to be a later age, right? Because youth is so glorified in this country. I'm like, actually, I am so grateful that I will be able to enter this space with the level of like consciousness, with the level of self-control, but also to your point, like, I know who's solid around me.
Yes.
Because they've been solid for 20 years.
That's it.
You know
Yeah,
what I'm
these the
saying?
homies
Like,
I done had
right?
through 2 careers. Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
I'll be like, I know I have people, like, to your point, I'm thinking right now, my friend Brittny Cheney, like, I could walk into her house tomorrow with $1 million in the bank, 1 million followers, a new show on HBO, and she would be like, if you don't get in here and help me,
I'm cooking green.
This, like, bitch, I don't give a fuck about none of that. Like, get your ass in here and watch these motherfucking greens.
Yes.
Like, bitch, do you need to eat or not?
That's so important.
And it's so dope that I'm like, instead of looking at this as like, oh, I have to rush because I'm this old. And caring about the vanity aspect of like, you know, you're gonna be on camera and all this shit.
Yeah.
Like, really being grateful of like, ooh, I'm glad I'm getting this when I can handle this in a way that I won't burn out.
Well, and you have the experience too. So like, one thing my cousin told me, because, you know, I started this journey, a couple years ago. And so, you know, in my 30s, and one thing my cousin told me, she was like, you know, you had to go get all of that experience. You had to go do all those things. Like, you know, I've gotten the degrees. I've traveled a lot of the world, like, you know, covered different foreign affairs in different countries. And I'm thinking like, man, what if I would have started this when I was in my 20s? How much further? But also I wouldn't have had all of those experiences had I started that early. And so now, you know, I can sit here with you and I can genuinely talk about the war in Ukraine because I've been there. Like I was there for Zelensky's election. Like I was there and I saw the Russian soldiers at the border. And so I wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise. So I do think also like, yeah, youth is glorified, but I think we need to get to the point where we glorify experience rather than people just like yelling into a mic.
A bar.
Right. Like, and because they, well, hell, we look young. I don't think people can tell how old we are, but.
Black don't crack.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. We're going to keep
moisturizing yellow
that
I got.
And drinking our water around
right.
here.
Minding our business.
But yeah, I do agree with you. And it makes it that much sweeter, I think, too, when, you know, you think about those friends who are on this journey and they've seen you accomplish things before, so they tend to be more willing to take this leap with you too. Yeah. So I appreciate my friends who, like, when I told them what I was doing, it was like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. Like,
do that.
That's your thing. 100%. So yeah.
So being that is your thing, you are socially liberal, fiscally conservative. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
First and foremost.
Yeah, no, it's actually really simple. So, I mean, if we had true socialism in this country, I would be a socialist, right? Like, I think I actually saw you post something the other day. I think it was you, who was just like, you know, I don't mind my tax dollars making sure that like my neighbor, my friend, my cousin can go to the doctor when they need to go to the doctor. Like that, I am 100% a socialist, right? And that I believe that if we are to be a working society where people have their basic necessities met. I'm not saying everybody got a G7. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying food, shelter, healthcare, education, things that should be just basic human rights. If my tax dollars are going to that, I have no problem at all. None. But since we don't have that in this country, for me, I am socially liberal, fiscally conservative, and here's what that means. Socially, I do believe in human rights, civil rights, political power of the people, right? People should have the freedom to do the things that make them happy as long as it's not hurting another person. So do I believe that, like, you know, a kid should be able to read the banned books? 100%, because it gives them a different perspective. Whether or not they agree, that's not my business. It's all about building empathy. It's all about like ensuring that they are able to go into someone else's mind and say, hey, here's their point of view, their perspective. I don't agree with it, but at least now I understand it so that I can have some respect for it.
Yeah.
Period. Fiscally conservative, because our country wastes so much motherfucking money. I mean, the fact that the Pentagon, what is it, for the third or fourth year straight, hasn't been able to like attest for trillions of dollars of our money is insane. So when you look at, and there are people who are like, oh, I'm fiscally conservative because like we were turning into a welfare state. Those people are ignorant as fuck, and I don't agree with them or even associate with those people. I am talking about we spend far too much. We are in way too much debt as a country. And then we go out and spend more money to fund 2 wars when we got people on the street here. You know, our food prices are insane. Our inflation is out of line. Rent is crazy. Thank God for a mortgage. But I'm hearing that rent is completely out of line.
It is.
Right? Like, our interest rates are insane. So, yes, I do believe that as a country, we need more oversight as to what the government is doing. I'm not saying bigger government at all. I am saying that the government even needs to be watched.
Yes.
Where are our tax dollars? Like, why are freeways crumbling, you know, in Wisconsin? Why are our roads tore up when I see you take money out of our check every single time we get paid? We pay taxes on the things we buy. We pay taxes on the things we already own. And yet you come to tell me that we have to have budget cuts for the programs that are meant to help Americans. That's insane to me. That's what I mean by being fiscally conservative, is that I think we are incredibly wasteful as a country. And our debt level is just putting us in a place where, like, we're everybody's bitch, because we owe everybody money at this point. So, yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. Like, do what makes you happy, you know, even if I don't understand it, as long as it's not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
But also, government, stop sending trillions of dollars overseas when we got problems right here. It's crazy.
I think one of the craziest facades of America is, if you're an individual here, there is this such big glorification of wealth, right? Like, you want to be a millionaire, billionaire, this, to the point where it makes you feel bad for being in whatever current financial situation you are. But when you look at capitalism as a structure, when you look at America as a society, they need a financial literacy course. Like,
it's
America as a whole, crazy credit cards, credit score would be big trash right now. If you held America to literal financial American systems, like, America couldn't get a loan. Like, if America walked into a bank today, America could not.
They'd be like, what's that mean? It was like, I got a credit score of 320. What can I get at the car lot? Like, you can get the fuck out of these people's face. Like, that's stop wasting in people's time. Like, that's how I feel America is. And then, so there's somebody on TikTok, I wish I knew the creator's name, but when the student loan conversations start coming back up, it was like, hold on, like, how you gonna tell me to pay my student loan and you the queen of debt? It's like you got the most debt out of all of us, and you come calling my phone talking about pay. America. Be easy.
Just
get yourself in line for, sweep around your own front door.
It's so, and that's, like, to your point, the whole tax thing of, like, I also, like, if I knew where my taxes were going and I was sure of it and I can see the fruits of it, I wouldn't trip. Right? I honestly, and I know maybe you may not agree with me, but, like, I am truly a socialist for sure. And I'm even okay if my taxes were a little bit higher. If I could actually see, if I had guaranteed that I knew it was going to things, because the things that it is going to are going to be so beneficial to me as a human being. It's going to be beneficial to my health. It's going to be beneficial to my mental wellness. I'm going to feeling safe.
Keep going.
Literally, the ability to feel safe creates so much peace, opportunity, and joy in your life. So if I saw my money going to work to actually create structures and systems that are creating safer environments, if I actually saw that my money was going towards things to, you know, make the environment literally a better place to breathe and walk.
Which means I'm saving money on healthcare that I'm now not paying a premium for every month, because now I have universal healthcare. Like, my education is free, right? We have Social Security that can fund our seniors when they retire. So now I don't have to put crazy money in a 401k. Like, y'all think about the fact your taxes may go up a few percentage points, right? But think about how much you are not paying every month into something, because you are now investing in a system that is going to take care of the things that you now pay for out of pocket. Healthcare, education, retirement. Like, it makes sense. Like, but the thing is, socialism has been so vilified in this country, and it's a great propaganda point, right? Where that, you know, you tell people like, oh, they're trying to take your wealth. No, we are trying to create a safety net for all of us, not the few. So when my grandmother or grandfather retires, I don't have to worry about where they're going to go, where they're going to live. They have now a stable income so that they can sustain their lives, because all of us have paid into a system so that we can all retire at 55, and I say 55 because we really don't need to be working any longer than that.
We do not.
But I mean, their health care is taken care of, right? Like, I know in LA or California you have Kaiser, right?
Yeah.
Which crazy high monthly premiums, right? It's like hundreds of dollars. If any of y'all are Kaiser babies, y'all know what I'm talking about. Now here, when I moved here, it was like I was at Baylor, and so you have that very that cheap, like, you know, monthly that you pay or whatever, but your deductible is crazy high. So you may have to reach a $2,000, $3,000 deductible before your benefits even begin to kick in. So either way, though, I'm spending a shit ton of money on healthcare when I could just pay, all of us could pay $100 a month, right, into the healthcare system so that when we need it, we can go and say, okay, I need my yearly checkup. Preventative care is a thing now, so that if we're healthy, I have a doctor, I see her once a year. She's like, everything checks out, I see you next year. She ain't calling me in every 5 minutes because I'm healthy.
Yes.
But the thing is, if I need her, I'm there. And that literally makes it balanced so that, say, B Nation and I don't need healthcare all year outside of our one preventative care checkup. But then all of a sudden our friend comes down with something and now she's able to go use those benefits when she needs them. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it makes perfect sense in a society where everyone has access to normal, basic human needs. Again, I ain't talking to G7 and a gold chain for everybody. It is just regular shit that you need to be a happy, healthy human being.
Yeah. And that actually kind of leads me to the next thought, which is like, I always want my conversations for this project specifically to be about envisioning the future, right? Like, the world is always changing. And so it's really important that we understand that, like, we co-create that change. Like, our action literally lays out the possibility of what that change could be.
Yeah.
And so when I think about where America could go, because capitalism has to burn out at some point because it's not sustainable. Like, they've literally shown that it is not a sustainable model. When I think about however long it takes, whether that's 100 years, 200 years, whatever this is, of like these systems having to change specifically in this country, I'm trying to envision what actually would be the best option, right? Because I'm a socialist, but I also am not, and I'm also a little not the best versed. So correct me if I'm wrong. It's like, I have a little capitalist in me, right? Of like, I should still be able to go out and like start a company, build this, gain whatever. Like a free market is what I'm thinking. But I'm still like a socialist at heart as far as how we can coexist with one another in a way that is most beneficial for everybody involved. So when you think about the possibility of where America could go in reference to what its political system could look like, what does your mind envision this thing looking like? And I would love to hear that in the most optimistic and then maybe even the most
my dystopian way.
Yes.
So I'll start with my dystopian view of it. Like, two-party system needs to go. The electoral college needs to go.
Can you elaborate on that?
The electoral college?
Of why you think it needs to go?
Yeah, I mean, like, the popular vote should be who becomes our person. Like, simple as that, right? But because of the way the electoral college is set up, and even the fact that those who cast the votes in the electoral college don't necessarily have to follow the will of the people in their state. So yeah, like, you can have, say, a perfect example is Trump versus Hillary Clinton, right, where he lost the popular vote, but he won in the electoral college, hence why he was able to become our president. And I just think that's absolutely ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. The two-party system makes it so that independent candidates or third-party candidates have slim to no chance of winning, and part of that is because of the electoral college. So yeah, I mean, we may have a great candidate who doesn't fall in line with either or. A great example of this is what's going on with the Democrats right now, right? So Biden being the sitting president, he will get the nomination for the presidential candidacy for 2024, but I think all of us, your reaction is exactly we're like, this is what we got. This is the best we got to offer.
It's crazy to me because I just think in any other situation that is significantly less dire than a president, right? Like, we would not be like, let's go hire our great grandpa.
That's not the best. That's not
to run some shit.
He's supposed to be like teaching us how to fish and do what granddaddies do. You know what I mean? Like, let me tell you, my granddad, Pops, he's amazing. He was amazing. I loved Pops. Would I want him running this country? No. I want, not only is he like just not in tune with what's going on across several generations.
Yes.
But also, you've done your part, Pops. Like, I literally would want my grandfather to be able to relax and chill. Like, I do not want Pops running a country at this age. Like, Biden is already the oldest president and will be by, I believe, 10 years over Reagan when he ends his second term. If and when he ends his second term. And I say if in several, cadences so that y'all understand what I mean. But yeah, like, I just think it's insane. Like, Biden, you got grandkids, right? Go hang out with them. Can you sit in someone's cabinet and be an advisor if you want? Seriously? 100%, because we do still need that knowledge.
Yes.
We do still need that wisdom. But another great example is when these fools sat up in there with the CEO of TikTok.
The whole concept.
And they were trying to, like, get on his ass, and then it dawned on you they don't even understand the technology. So the way they was like, so do you have access to people's IP addresses? He was like, no. Why would I? He was like, location. And he was like, what are we talking about here? They were just screaming shit at one point, and the CEO was just like, what? And then finally he was like, well, all of the things that you're accusing me of, you do realize American social media companies do these things, right?
Every single one of them.
What are we talking about? So no. So, okay, so let's go back to where we were. We got to get rid of those things. So in my dystopian, like, mind, right, I'm going to be honest, like, I almost feel like society would be better ruled almost by a panel of people.
Yes.
Rather than, this, well, and it's not even this individual, right, because we have branches, right? But I've always, even as a kid, I always had this idea of, like, what if, we have this panel of maybe 12 people, right, who half are women, half are men. They look different, right, in order to represent the different demographics of our society. They come from different socioeconomic statuses, so that, it's not all wealthy people making decisions for working class people. So there is a sense of, like, actually being on the ground floor and understanding what everyday people are going through in this country.
Yeah.
So in my dystopian head, like, that's what I would love to see, is like, and I'm gonna be honest, where this came from is somebody saying to me a few years ago, like, man, you should run for office. And I'm like, yeah.
You would have my vote.
But here's the thing, though. I already know me, like, I've never been one who believes that I can make the best decisions for the masses. So I tend to go to people I trust, like, hey, check me real quick. If I'm thinking about this wrong, tell me if I'm wrong. And I've always made big decisions, especially when they impact other people. Even when I was in management and corporate, I would go to my trusted advisors and be like, hey, before I pull this trigger, tell me if I'm thinking about this wrong or if I'm seeing something different. I would go to my employees and line them up like, hey, what do y'all think? Like, because y'all are on the ground floor. Y'all are doing the work. Let me know if I'm making the right decision. So I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind running for office, but I promise you I would need, like, a cabinet of people that I would consult before I made any decision.
Exactly why you would get my vote.
Right?
What are we talking
And so
about?
then I thought, like, what if we took that even up to the top, right? Where, yeah, like, he can veto something, but you should probably consult with some people who are in place to keep you in check and in line, to make sure that it's not a power play. It's not there to benefit you and your family or alone, right? Or your buddies or your donors or a lobbyist or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, Rome fell, right? America, I'm gonna just say America. I do think when we begin to rebuild, and it probably won't be during, our lifetime, but I do think when that rebuild happens, and I'm saying this because I do believe that somehow somebody is going to find this episode in the future and say, like, what did our predecessors say about what we should do in this country? Think about creating a world that anybody could thrive in. I don't care if they are black, white, male, female, non-binary, straight, gay, Christian, Muslim. There probably won't be religion by that point, right, if we get to this point. Disabled, right, or their brains are wired differently from the rest of you. Like, think about that. Like, think about a place where people are able to identify what they have to offer to society, and they can give that thing, and that thing will allot them basic human necessities: housing, food, water, education, healthcare. Yeah. And I'll leave it at that. I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I do think that it's not this. And as we watch the empire fall, the generations after us will begin to have to think about how to rebuild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to require us to have a lot more individual responsibility, which is not feeling like where the world naturally is taking us as far as like, or this culture in American culture is taking us. It takes us farther away from owning our own individual responsibility. But I always think about, like, there's a story in the Bible. I don't remember who was the first king of Israel, but they used to have 12 tribes. And when they noticed that other places had, other societies had kings or rulers, and they saw that and they were like, we want that, we want that, we want that. And I remember the story of it is that they kept asking God for it, and God kept saying no at first. Of like, y'all don't need to do that.
You don't even know.
Y'all don't know what you're creating. And then they kept asking, and at some point, the first king was appointed. I don't remember who it was. And, the idea is that from that bloodline, all the other things like David, Jesse, blah, 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 all the way down to Jesus and all the other stuff, which that's a whole other episode of like breaking that down too. Cause I'm like, I don't think people also realize that like Abraham brings this lineage to Jesus, but the other son he had, which is Hagar, that with Hagar, you know how like she sent the prostitute in? That lineage actually goes to Muhammad. And so actually both of those were birthed from the same person, but yet we fought each other for millennia.
I know. So the Quran, right? Like, what's crazy is they talk about Jesus a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
And what I found interesting is that there is this acknowledgement that, like, yes, we believe he's a prophet, but we just don't believe he's the son of God.
Yeah.
And growing up Christian, right? Oh, you couldn't even have respect for it the other way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, oh no, who? Muhammad. That's just, and I just found it interesting that like there was this sense of respect for Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Flowing one way but going the other way. There was never any, at least in the church I grew up with, there was never any sense of respect for their beliefs or even that lineage, as you said. Yeah.
And it is really interesting that to grow up, for personally as someone who grew up Christian, that I don't identify as a Christian because I don't have I'm very particular and literal about things, and I'm like, to be a part of this group, you have to agree to all of these things to be a part of that group. And I think you can be a Christian and have varying beliefs on political society, all those things, but like you have to believe that the only way to God is through this human.
That's it.
And I can't rock with that. And because that's the fundamental deal for this thing to work, I can't call myself that because I can't process that. And it is interesting to me that when you think about the Muslim culture, it's like they're actually significantly more accepting in all of the ways, and which goes against all the propaganda that's been pushed to us in this country, right? But it is interesting to think that when you look at the life of Jesus, he never needed to go to a church to talk to God. He never needed to have someone stand between him and God to get to God. And he literally came and was like, hey, I'm about to be a model of how y'all should do this. Died, y'all, whatever, for whatever reasons. And it became a glorification of a person and an idolatry of a person when this person demonstrated, I go directly to God. I don't go through these other people because that causes too much corruption and issues or whatever. And the only time he stepped in the church was to fight.
Because y'all was selling stuff.
Literally stepped in there to fight.
I say all the time that like Jesus would be here kicking it with me and you before
with the niggas always.
Before like a lot of these pastors and a lot of these Christians that I've seen. Like, you 100% said it. Jesus walked in and started flipping fucking tables over because y'all was selling stuff in the temple. I know mega churches that got gift shops in the church. Like, I mean, Jesus literally did the things that y'all call socialism.
Yes.
Fed the poor, like housed people, healed the sick. There was health. Jesus came with health care. He came with health care. And all of the things that y'all are saying is against America, which you say is a Christian nation. You say it's a Christian nation. It's just amazing to me that y'all are in direct opposition of how Jesus would have moved in this society right now. And then you wonder why, like, young people are leaving the church. It's like, because it don't make no goddamn sense.
This don't make no sense.
It don't make no sense, y'all.
Yeah.
And then there's this sense of like entitlement of, well, because I say I'm a Christian, I can do whatever, and say whatever as long as it's under the guise of being a man or a woman of God. And we saw that a lot when Trump came to power, right? Where these evangelical Christians who were terrible, were able to get away with it because, I'm a Christian. God said. Like, what was the one who was trying to dispatch angels from heaven? What's that lady name? Oh, God. Joyce? Is her name Joyce?
Joyce Myers?
White lady?
Joyce Myers is a white lady.
She was Trump's
no,
spiritual advisor.
That wasn't Joyce Myers.
It was a lady. Oh, what was her name? Anyway, so when they showed the results from the second election and he was losing, they cut to her church and they were having like a prayer service. And so she was like calling angels to be dispatched from Africa. And so of course all the niggas was like, nah, we're gonna sit this one out.
We good, bitch.
We good. Thanks though. Thanks for calling. Right.
Also, how the fuck you get this number?
Moses.
Right.
Stop giving my number out. Damn.
That is hilarious.
So yeah, and I've seen that too. It's not just evangelical Christians, all right. Growing up in a black church, I've seen a lot of people cover up whatever they're doing or be forgiven because they are a man or woman of God. And I'm like, I'm so grateful that I've never needed the threat of daddy in the sky sending me to hell to be a good person. Like, my moral compass was internal. And it still is, right? I don't have to have a threat of being sent to hell to treat people good and to do the right thing. So religion serves a purpose for some people when they need that, right? They need that threat of something bad happening to them. Yeah, Sky Daddy. of something happening
Sky Daddy got a belt.
Right. But some of us are just like, nah, it's just innate in me to be a good person. Like, I don't have to have the threat of going to hell to be a good person. So it serves its purpose for some people, but for others, Child.
Yeah. Shout out to R.I.P. to Carlton Pearson.
Yes.
Who am like, I literally shed a tear when I saw that he passed because I was like, you did something so radical in your lifetime.
And stood on it.
And stood on that shit.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are watching that are not into, that
church.
To the church, you know what I'm saying? Because I still got my eye to the church too. Carlton Pearson was a pastor. He was technically a mega pastor. He was a singer. He had CDs and stuff.
Live at Azusa. Still one of the best.
Come on now. That's how I know who he is, because of Azusa. But at some point during his Christian faith, he got a revelation that hell is not real. And he stood on that. And he was very ostracized by the church.
100%.
And the most beautiful thing is that he then led to creating a space that so many people came to. I don't remember the name of his church at the last set of years that he was here.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's something that it's not even super Christian. It's like loves. It's something that's a lot more expansive of a name. But he also had such a large amount of people who have been ostracized by the church, like, come and have a space finally to exist. And it was crazy because I really thought about it from a spiritual aspect of, to choose a spiritual life ain't one for play.
Yeah.
Right? And even if you think about Jesus as a prophet, he went through a lot of crazy shit. And I feel like when you choose to have certain, like, spiritual ascensions, they're costly.
Yes.
They are really costly. Like that shit costs him literally everything.
Yeah.
But he also went to a new level in a space of where he opened doors for so many other people to literally be able to have a space to come commune with God, right?
Yes, yeah.
And though I don't believe you need to go to a church to commune, I do believe that there is something about if you grew, we are creatures of nostalgia. So if we love our grandparents and we love our parents and all, and they went to, there's a
Church was a big
nostalgia
part
there.
of,
Yeah. And there are some fantastic things that church taught me. Like the fact that I've grown up my entire life and can show that everything I have put my hand on has been for the community. Like I'm a teacher, I'm an educator, like all of this stuff is with intention of helping. And I don't know that I would have landed here without having the practice that built that in me through the lens of church is how I got it.
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are ways other lenses of how you can get it, but speaking to my experience, that's how I got there. So there's a lot of valuable things that come from it. But I also, like I told you, I'm like, you're going to have to speak on the church today.
Yeah, no, please, yeah.
Politics and religion have a deep tie in the Black community. And oftentimes, when we think about specifically like the 60s, pastors and religious leaders got into politics to change the narrative of what's going on for their communities. And when we think about Martin Luther King, we think about Malcolm X, like all of these people are spiritual leaders, 100%. Right? So the Black church and Black politics have been intertwined in a way that I believe is a little toxic now.
Yeah.
I mean, yes. Yeah. It's starting to, I feel like the vines are starting to choke the life out of certain things. When you think about how Black culture the Black church or religious culture is with like Black politics, how do you look at the intertwining of those things?
Yeah, I mean, you said it, like the history has always been there. Like even before the civil rights, right, you have to remember that slave masters would allow, right, Black preachers who were slaves to have church on Sundays. That was their day off. And now granted, the Bible was, limited in what they were allowed to study and to read. But even with that, right, when you think about what was left out of the slave Bible, it was a lot of talk about freedom. It was a lot of talk about ascension that was left out. What was kept in there was that slaves should obey their master, right? It was a lot of the obedience and that your reward will come after you leave this world, right? So yeah, you may be going through it now, but and when you think about it, that was directly tied to the politics of that time because slavery was legal and there was a whole lot of fighting back and forth. The whole Civil War was fought about whether these people should be allowed to keep slaves, right? So even then, the slave church was meant to indoctrinate slaves about the politics of the time. So that just continued. You did have Malcolm X, you did have Martin Luther King, and not just those two, right? You had several, and probably thousands even of preachers and pastors who were directly involved with the politics of the country. For Black people, the church is where we went. And I would say even when I was a small child, the church is where we went to know who we should be voting for, who was for us, who was against us, all of that. And so I remember during election times in my own church hearing my pastor talk about, certain candidates, whether it was the mayor of Los Angeles or the governor or even the president of the United States. And that message was being spread. And the reason it was important was because my parents were looking to their pastor, the person they trusted the most, to give them the direction as far as who they would lay their vote down for. Now, though, I think that politicians have certainly caught on, right? So there's a reason why you saw Biden going to Reverend Warnock's church, right, in Atlanta, right, and sitting there while the choir is going, trying to find the beat. He was trying to find the rhythm.
That man probably left with no eardrums. His eardrums is damn near dust anyway. But
but there's a reason that these politicians know to go to Black churches in order to get a certain demographic. But where they're struggling now is that people like me and you, our demographic, younger, we're not going to church every Sunday. And so how do they reach us? And so now, we see social media campaigns, things like that. But yeah, the church has always been incredibly influential in our political doings because it was the place that was the bedrock and the cornerstone of the Black community. And it was the place that a lot of families trusted most for their information, for their guidance, whether it be spiritual, financial, whatever. I am one who believes that the Black church in particular has taken on this capitalistic, way of doing. I don't know if y'all watched the movie or the show Greenleaf. It was one of my favorite shows, and it was about a mega church. It was
Yes.
ran.
I lived it, but I didn't watch it.
Right, run by a Black family, and it showed how there was spirituality on one side, absolutely, but there was money and capitalism on the other side. And so I think Black churches now, to be honest, are more in line with, how mega churches are doing it, pay for play. The big politicians can come in if they're willing to make the right donation, right, or give the right press or PR to the church and lobby to the people and campaign to the people of the church in hopes of garnering, the support of the majority of the congregation there. So yeah, I think the church used to be great as far as like helping us to understand, what's happening in politics. But I do think the Black church has gotten in line with a lot of these other mega churches that we're seeing who push Trump on their, on their congregations. And I also think that the demographic is kind of taken for granted a little bit because like Biden knew he could roll up to Warnock's church, right? Because like, of course I want my church on TV. Of course I want, people to come down here and give in the offering today. Yeah. And so it's almost like kind of selling the church out, right, for the highest bidder. So.
And I feel like it's such a weird like mess of things because church is going to preach a certain level of conservative nature, but yet Black people are typically tied to the Democratic Party, and I'm like, all of this doesn't make sense. Like, none of it, and it's not to say that I wish they chose one or the other. I just wish that you would look and see that it doesn't make a lot of sense.
I think that would mean Black people having to say like, neither of them really want me. And I think because of the two-party system, we feel like we have to belong somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the conservatives are talking about like taking my voting rights away. But what's crazy, and you're 100% right, when I look at the Black church, especially very conservative Black churches, they're actually more in line with Republican values.
Absolutely.
Than they are with Democratic. The abortion issue, LGBTQ, like when I'm like, y'all sound like them.
Literally.
Y'all, the only thing is y'all are fiscally liberal, and that's what Democrats are getting you on. They're saying like, oh yeah, we do want to fund, not free healthcare, but like free pre-K. Or yeah, we do want to, make sure that our entitlement programs are funded and Social Security. So I really do think it's the fiscal part that captures Black people into the Democratic Party, especially church people. I'm not saying all Black people, but like hardcore Christians like my grandma, like it's that fiscal part that she likes of the Democratic Party, but that social part, she's right there with conservatives. She's right there with them because she doesn't believe in any of the things I believe. Like we are direct opposites when it comes to like our social policy.
Yes.
And so yeah, but chances are year after year she's going to vote Democratic.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is like, well, I'm not gay, I'm not getting an abortion, but I do need my Social Security funded. I do need like certain things. So yeah, I hear these conservatives over here, and I agree with that part, but at least these Democrats are over here talking about funding the things that are directly impacting my life. And so I do think that they're having to make a choice between their fiscal policy beliefs and their social policy beliefs.
Yeah. Do you think that there needs to be like almost a level of separate? I mean, we call it a separation of church and state, but literally a separation of like, when you come here into this space for spiritual guidance, like, let's just leave it to that. And like all of this person's particular, because I think what bothers me most about my experience of church, and I always try to use it that way because I've seen other people do things that are really about creating change in that space, right? Like my sister does a lot of work within that sector about trying to move church to being a more holistic experience for people to take care of themselves, mind, body, and spirit. And like the infusion specifically in Black church of like, mind and body need to be included in this, not just like
not you come here
for, we need to learn how to take care of ourselves physically. We need to learn how to deal with our mental health, but also our emotions and things of that nature. So I have visual representations of like, there are people who are choosing something different in that space. But I also do believe that like this sense of giving people an idea of what they should go do in such a direct way, I think is harmful to people.
100%.
It's madly crippling because I think when you talk about coming to a space for being fed spiritually, it's about you learning how to like navigate your own life. How do you become empowered? How do you understand from a space that you operate with power? That's why I had to really get away from this like sky daddy thing of like, there's this thing outside of me that's dictating how everything is going.
Because I should be able to self-regulate.
Because I should have, and that's why I say to circle all that back is like all of this would have to move us towards getting more individually responsible, communally responsible, which I do think means that, because it could, the argument of like, we're so inundated with all of these things and all that is true, but I also think it will require us to require something more of our country, right? It will require us to be like, hey, for us to be this level of responsible, that means we can't work 40 hours a week. Like we'd have to be okay with all of this shit running with 3 because we want to have a life, but we also have to be really responsible with our community, with ourselves and stuff like that. So the things that would hinder people from even wanting that responsibility or saying we can't because we're this, we're that, we're that. It's like you actually gain a lot more. You gain a lot of your life back. And that was the number one thing when you spoke about travel that going to another country taught me. I was like,
they enjoying life.
Y'all living.
Yeah, we are here surviving.
Surviving. Every day.
Yeah, we just trying to make it. When I was in Italy, I thought we was gonna be late to a lunch meeting, right? And I'm American, right? So I can't be late. This is the CEO of the airport, right? That I'm about to be meeting. So we're running behind, and I'm telling my host like, "Yo, we gotta go. He was like, "Calm down." I was like, "What do you mean? Like we about to be late?" And he was like, "Okay, let me explain this to you. Like that is a very American thing that I need you to relax on for a few days." He's like, what we gonna do is run by my favorite wine store real quick. We're gonna go take some coffee and then we'll get to our meeting. And I'm just like, in my head, now mind you, I'm still working in corporate, right? Like to be out an hour late to the meeting with the CEO is just insane, right? People would they damn near fire you for that because the CEO's time is so important that you just don't do that. We get to the meeting. Not only is the CEO late, he walks in with his crew like, hey guys, orders a bottle of wine. You know, we have a 3-course meal. We sit around, we talk for hours. And I'm just thinking like this would never happen. We were working, but also we just enjoyed the day.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking like, I've never known this feeling of like, I got the thing accomplished that I was supposed to be doing today. But I did it in a way that didn't stress me out. It didn't open up my ulcers. It didn't like, I was chilling, and you're 100% right. But then that goes back to like our stress levels, like our food, our health, all of these things are killing us softly.
Yes.
And slowly.
Not very softly.
Yeah, well, hell, at this point, you know.
It's not that soft,
at
but
this
yes.
point, like, yeah, we all probably got inflammation everywhere.
Everywhere.
In our bodies.
Everywhere.
Yeah, but no, you're right. They're living, and it almost makes me feel like, do I need to stay here, or is it time to go?
I've deeply considered.
Is it time to go?
Getting up out of here multiple times. And I the thing that keeps me is, it's like, anywhere you go, there's going to be some level of an issue, right? But I think that part of what keeps me is this sense of like, damn, like I can't just leave and like now this shit don't get better because I didn't fight for it to get better. You know what I'm saying?
And like, I can't talk trash about America outside of America. They're gonna be like, you don't even know, you don't even live here. Like,
you don't even go here.
Don't even go here.
that sense of, I mean, I even had that sense of responsibility for my city, like to have to move to a place to be able to like get out of survival mode and have the peace and the space and the movement to like think and create the life that I want. There's still this like thing that sits in the back of my head of like, okay, so you just left Oakland? Like, so what's Oakland supposed to do?
Same.
Like,
Same.
I know you feel that way about
when
LA.
I went back
you know
to
what
LA,
I'm saying?
I was like, are all these homeless people here because I left? Like, and not like that. Like, is it me?
Am I the problem? But even that, which I still plan to do a lot of things that I want to do for Oakland and Oakland youth specifically, but there is this like almost survivor's guilt of like, even if you get out and make something more of yourself, like, is this sense of like, am I responsible to have to like go back and contribute in some way?
Yeah.
Or is my win, because there is this, especially coming from Oakland, there is this sense of like, there's this tone of, to make it, you have to get out of here. And I resented that living there. I hated this idea that people are like, you got to leave here to make it. Like, damn, that's wild. And I don't think that that's true for everybody, because I never hone in on definites about many things in life. But I really sometimes battle like, damn, I hate that I feel like I had to leave to like be able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish.
I needed to, and I say this because like, for me, I think more than anything, family would have just been a bit of a distraction. Like being from there, having your family there, like even when I go back now, it's like, can you do this? Can you run and do? And so for me, and I didn't know it at the time, but I do think it was kind of, you know, destined. I needed to leave so that I could focus on my stuff.
Yeah.
Like even when I was getting ready to leave from Thanksgiving, and my sister, you know, was trying to send my niece with me. And I was just like, no, like, you know, I have all these things going on right now. Like, not to mention I hadn't planned on taking her with me. So I don't have anything set up for her to do. Like, nah. And so the first time I said no, I guess she was just thinking like, oh, she's just being. So then like the day before I left, she was like, so I'm buying this ticket for her to go with you or no? Or what? I was like, no. I was like, you're not.
How many times we gotta say no?
Yeah, like I'm still in recording. I have 2 podcasts to record when I get back. I'm getting ready to start my class on Monday. I got work. Like, no, the answer is no. And I just realized that had I been in LA, that would have been constant. Like, and because my family depends on me a lot, it's like, y'all either want me to go whip this work so that I can send you that $100 when you need it, or you want me to lay everything down to help everybody else so that I can't build anything for myself. And to be honest, like I've kind of had to get selfish. Like, nah, this is something I want for me. So for me, it did mean having to leave the city. But I will say that like LA is kind of starting to call me back. I can feel it. Like it's starting to call me back. And so
not just yet, but okay.
Yeah, not yet. But I think for where I want to take the show, for what I want to do with it, like I wouldn't mind being in LA.
That's real.
And so, you know, the more I go back now, the more I'm like, all right, I'm just starting to manifest like what that looks like for me. Because I still would need a little bit of that separation from the family just because of the amount of focus it takes to do this type of work. But also just being able to help the city, like put my dollars back in the city, like
that's real.
Put my body back in the city, right, in hopes of doing good things the way I know you want to for Oakland. So yeah.
I miss it, but I also don't. Like, I miss aspects of it, but I think there will be a time where it does call back to me, but it hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
But I've always been someone that I kind of have a deep belief that I want to be in multiple places. Like, I don't really care to stay in one set place forever. And I'm talking with, no children and all this other stuff. So who knows, whatever happens in life, all of this could be, you can run this back and be like, oh, wait, she was full of shit.
Yeah.
But I do think that there will always be this kind of like place in my heart that pulls me to be like, I want to make sure that kids from where I'm from have better opportunities. I want to make sure that they have better chances. I want to make sure they have outlets for creative expression. I want all of those things to happen as well. So at some point, it'll probably, if it doesn't pull me physically, it will pull my attention and my money in some way, shape, or form. But to kind of like end this out, we're talking about like our hometowns and our home cities, and like the value of, even when I think about politics, caring about what's happening at a local level. Would you make the argument that that's almost more important, or would you say equally as important as understand what's happening at federal levels?
Yeah. I mean, local levels are going to impact your everyday life.
Yeah.
Right. So, I know the federal elections are sexy. Those are the ones that we all, gear up for and get excited on the day of. But those local elections, who you're putting in those, in that judge robe, who you're putting in that commissioner role, all of those things impact your everyday life. Even the propositions you are voting on, either for or against, right? Taxes, legalization of certain things, like that is day-to-day impact right there. And then you go to the state level, right? Some of that stuff is going to impact your day-to-day, but it may be your month-to-month at a state level. Then you go federal, right? That's the more long-term, the bigger shit. Excuse me. You may not see a direct impact of that, right away, but there is some impact there. But more importantly, though, when you elect that local leader, most politicians have ambitions to move up, right? So start paying attention at a local level, right? Think about Jasmine Crockett, right, who started with District 100 right here, right? Now she's a U.S. House of Representative member. But had we not got her in at that local level, she wouldn't have been able to go to the State House, and then she wouldn't have been able to go to the United States House. So start paying attention to these politicians when they're at that, when they're still in your neighborhood, when they're still in the district, when they're still in the city or even in the state, because those people grow up in politics and they go on to either pass or deny the things that impact your lives. Yeah. So 100%. And then from there, I tell everybody, like, it's important to have the local, the state, the federal level stuff. But then when you get a little time, pay attention to what's going on in the world too, because bigger than the U.S. is how we impact and how we collaborate with either our allies or how we go up against our enemies. And so, when October 7th happened, right, like, I don't think a lot of people understood what was getting ready to happen when that attack went down. And it's because a lot of us don't pay attention to Americans' foreign policy and how we often have our hands in more things than most people can readily identify.
And we're bullies.
Y'all.
Our whole MO has been to be bullies.
Who gonna check us has always been our thing. Who gonna check me?
So if your personal ethos is not in alignment with bullying, then I'm like, how are you immediately going, well, we're on the side of what America's doing? I'm like, but we always we have a whole shtick about being an asshole.
Just a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I think about the border crossing all the time and how we have had a direct hand in the destabilization of many of the countries that we are seeing these folks come to the border from. And it's funny because we're like, oh, we should close our borders. I'm like, maybe you should stop fucking with people and then they wouldn't even need to come over here. How about that?
In the first place.
How about that? So when you start paying attention on local, state, federal level, but international level, y'all will see that a lot of this shit is directly correlated. One thing is a direct consequence, if not direct, then at least a few derivatives down the line, a consequence of something that our country has done. And so, you know, it's like we throw our rock and we love to hide our hand, right? But when you look at that U.S.-Mexico border in particular, and those who are coming from countries like Venezuela and Haiti and Mexico, it is because we and our friends, Western powers, right, colonialist powers, have had a direct hand in the destabilization of either the economy or the political system, or both in those places, and people are fleeing to a place that they believe is safer. And to be honest, I'm like, well, shit, let them in, because y'all fucked their country up anyway, so like, might as well help them out. Give them a meal.
Right.
Yeah, so,
a little shower.
Right,
You know what I'm saying?
So yeah. Local elections are important for sure, but I think once you start getting that under your belt, you'll just build. People tend to just build on top of, you know, of what they're already paying attention to. So, yeah.
So, if someone is looking, you know, to find time to be a little more educated on these things, they could go to this great place called the Green Route Podcast.
They can. I heard it was fantastic. Somebody said,
you know, ain't none of us biased, but
it's politics, liquor, and cussing. So
as we like it, we need it delivered in that way.
We need all of that. So yeah, the Green Route. But even outside of my podcast, you know, another great source that I pay attention to every day is Democracy Now. Amy Goodman is the host. She has been doing this for over 20 years. She's fantastic. Their full episodes are on YouTube. So Democracy Now. Al Jazeera has been doing fantastic coverage of Israel and Hamas, so much so that Israel was threatening to kick Al Jazeera's operation out of Israel because their reporting has been just the truth. Yeah, it's been the truth, right? So that's another great one, y'all. And I mean, if you're like me, you know, sometimes you need it, you know, just with a teaspoon of sugar to go down. And so The Daily Show is fantastic. Last Week Tonight is another great one. So yeah, there's a lot of good resources, I think, that are teaching politics and teaching current events, and like Democracy Now is serious, right? Yeah. Like, it's a very serious show. But those other ones that I mentioned, like, they do a great job of giving you politics in a way that's entertaining. It's funny, it's witty, which, you know, will stretch just your intellectual muscle. So yeah, the Green Route is great. Y'all follow, like, all of that stuff, but please check out those other sources too, because they're where I tend to go when I'm doing my studying as well. So, yeah.
Beautiful. So if nothing else, you're not allowed to be apathetic.
Nah, don't do that.
Not doing it.
Don't do that.
Because it affects you regardless.
Yeah.
And if you don't want power over your life, that means you can choose to stay ignorant. But if you want some power over it, if you want to be intentional and make choices and actually contribute to change in this country, specifically in a country that, you know, glorifies the performative nature of things, but doesn't necessarily require action. Yeah, like, if you want to be about it, be about that shit. Dang. Stand on that shit you talk about. It's
like business on the bottom of your shoe.
You know, Rihanna said, pull up. You know what I'm saying?
And thank you for restarting this platform. Like, I remember when you said you were going to do it, and here we are. Here we are.
I was like, I don't know about you guys. Like, yes, do it.
So, no, we are here. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
For doing this, and
thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, I don't really know how to end these things, so I'll figure that out when it comes. Bye.
And there it is.
There it is then.